Hello everyone, it's Roisin here, Roisin and Ruben. And today I don't have a gazebo over my head because there's been a storm coming through Galway for the last few days. And unfortunately, my gazebo is on the lawn upside down. And of course, it couldn't just land upside down. It had to land on a chair that was in the garden. So now it's got a big rip in it. So my dear husband and I, we celebrated 25 years of marriage, and we decided, well, my husband got the idea to go to Inishbofin, which is a lovely island off the coast of Galway. And it's got a kind of a special place in my heart because my parents owned a house on the far western edge of Galway throughout the late 70s and the 80s. And it's where we spent our summer holidays, myself and my 7 brothers and sisters, for a few years. And it's the reason I came to live in Galway in the first place, because it was magical. I don't think the sun ever went behind a cloud for the entire decade or whatever it was that we went there. So Inishbofin is just close to Cleggan, which is where my parents had a home. And you have to go to Cleggan to get to Inishbofin. So Marcel and I drove out to Cleggan on what was promised to be the best 2 days of the summer so far, which isn't saying a lot, but it was going to be fantastic. It's going to be sunny and warm and just wonderful. And sure enough, for the first, we'll say maybe 8 hours, 12 hours, something like that, it was absolutely paradise. And you could be fooled for thinking that Ireland was just this like godsend in the planet, which it is in many ways. However, a storm pushed through on the second day that we were there, of the 3 days and 2 nights that we had booked. However, not to be beaten, I got lots and lots of sketches done while we were there, because there was a lot of time spent wondering when the rain was going to stop. So, and even when we were outside, I did lots and lots of sketches because that's what I like to do. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you my sketches, and I'm going to give you a couple of tips for sketching in a storm, and indeed when it's not stormy, but sketching when you're confined to indoors, and how to beat the blues when you would much rather be on a beach with turquoise water lapping at your feet, as we were for the first 8 to 10 hours. So I hope you enjoy the sketches I'm going to show you, and I hope you pick up a few tips on how to get those sketches looking as good as they can. The trip on the ferry in to the island, to the harbour, is very dramatic, and on the right as you approach you can see the ruins of a fort built by Cromwell a few hundred years ago, where he put prisoners and the like. This is our hotel, and I did not fake the blue sky in the background, and these are our bikes because we had intentions to do lots of cycling. As we approached the ferry, we could see this strip of blue sky looking tantalisingly just out of our reach. But as we pulled into the harbour, sure enough, the sun came out, and we spent the next couple of hours having a nice drink on the benches in front of the hotel. Tip number 1, the boat in the foreground was twisting and turning and bobbing, and it was a bit annoying to try and catch it in the same place. So my tip here is draw it twice, draw it more than once at different positions so that the tide and the bobbing doesn't get the better of you, and you always have a position to draw the boat. After a drink, we packed our swimsuits and our towels into our bags, hopped on our bikes and made our way up the road towards the western side of the island. We passed lots of little cottages and houses along the way, and lots of cars that didn't bother with tax discs or wheels or whatever. And it was all very, very lovely and quaint. And we passed chickens. There's Marcel on his bike. We passed livestock happily mooching around, pecking at things on the road in the sunshine. It was a glorious evening, and the views were magnificent. All very, very lovely. This is the 12 Bens stretching out into the distance over Connemara. Look at that sparkling sea. Isn't it gorgeous? Here's the ferry departing from the harbour in Inishbofin back towards the mainland. Another little boat enjoying the sparkling sunshine and the gorgeous evening. Then we looked to our left and we saw what looked like a beach, and we couldn't believe it. And we wondered how on earth we were going to get down there. And it was pretty steep, but we made our way down. And once we got down there, our effort was greatly rewarded. And the sea was sparkling and turquoise, and the sand was whitey golden lovely sandy stuff. So we tried to muster up the courage to jump into the beautiful sea, which we knew would be freezing. But we did it, and sure enough, it was absolutely freezing. But we did it. Afterwards, I wanted to make a sketch because I wanted to commemorate that special moment. So here's my tip number 2. Rather than draw a picture of yourselves in the scene that you're drawing from a photo or whatever, which would be lovely, but I just don't like doing it. I prefer to draw from life. Why not include something that's personal to you both, such as your swimming togs, or it could be your shoes or your sandals or something cute like that. It was so lovely there at the water's edge that we forgot the time and had to race up and run back along the little grassy path to get fed before the kitchen closed in the hotel where we were staying. And to our absolute joy, these fabulous musicians were playing. Here's tip number 3. This is a great one for drawing musicians. Don't panic if they move an awful lot, because they will come back to take that position again, and they're a great way to get used to drawing people in movement. The next day dawned a little bit rainy and a little bit cold, so Marcel and I retired to the hotel living room and we drew out the window. Well, I drew out the window while Marcel read his book. I loved those seagulls flying around the trawler that had pulled into the edge of the harbour, and the guy on the boat was, the fisherman I guess, was throwing chum. I don't know, do you call it chum when it's for seagulls? But he was throwing bits of fish into the water and the seagulls were going crazy. So I drew what I could see, and I've got a slight little snippet of what I was drawing here for you, and I tried to capture the scene as best I could. Now here's my tip number 4. When you've got something white in front of a scene, take your pencil afterwards and scribble in as much as you can around the white things, obviously the seagulls in this case, with just a regular pencil, just to darken up around the seagulls, because that way anything white will really, really stand out if you darken whatever is just behind them. Well, despite our best wishes and intentions, the rain didn't stop. So we went to the pub just next to the hotel, and I had some lovely crisps, and I drew the people sitting in front of us on their little roundy tables from Americans, and I was attracted to all the colours, the blues and the browns. Now, here's my tip number 5. When you're drawing a person, draw them in their entirety first before you go on to the next person. Why? Because they're going to move. So I draw them and I paint them before I go on to the next person, as you could see in that first little part of the drawing. No, I really, really wanted to be honest and show you the island in the storm and what happened. But I chickened out, so I've stuck in this little snippet that Marcel took of the beach where we were having such a lovely first evening. Here's me being told to put my phone away for the shot. But look at the blue sky, look at the green fields. Well, the time came to leave and we were all packed up and checked out and ready to catch the 1 o'clock ferry. And in the hour or so that I had before the ferry was due to leave, I decided to venture out into the storm because there was really nothing going on in the hotel. And I sat in a little cafe that was all closed and battened down, and with the wind howling, I drew the sea in front of me. Now, here's my tip number 6 for a stormy sky. Put some clean water on the sky, because you won't see much in the way of clouds and blue or anything like that. Put some clean water on the sky and then dab on some super granulating colours. I used deep sea violet here. It works a treat. It always comes out really, really believable and realistic. So invest in some deep sea violet. It's a super granulating colour by Schminke, but there are lots and lots of beautiful super granulating colours that will do the job just as well. By the time I finished that sketch of the stormy sea, my fingers had turned a horrible shade of kind of blackish purple with white blotches on them. And when I got back to the hotel where Marcel was waiting for me, he was actually a little bit concerned because I went very quiet and he's not used to that. And then we found out that the 1 o'clock sailing was cancelled because of the storm. So we had to mooch around and just kind of do stuff for a few hours, go to a pub and that kind of thing, and hope for the best. Hope that the 5 o'clock sailing wouldn't also be cancelled. But here's our ferry. What is she called? The Island Adventure Galway. I'm hoping she's going to pull out of this harbour in about half an hour and take us back to Cleggan on the mainland. Well, I guess the waves weren't too bad, because we did indeed pull out of the harbour and into those crashing waves, and the ferry did lurch and roll a little bit. But Marcel assured me that it was perfectly normal and it could take on waves a lot more rough than those ones. So I stuck the phone against the window and I filmed what I saw just above the water outside. It's very dramatic, very lovely. And I look forward to the next time, some beautiful spell of weather, when I'll drive back to Cleggan, hop on the ferry, make my way over to Inishbofin, do a bit of exploring, maybe even a bit more sketching, and I shall report back. Oh, by the way, if you are inspired to buy any of the sketching stuff that I've included in this video, then I would really appreciate it if you would tell the companies in question that you got the idea from Roisin, that Roisin sent you. Because I am not sponsored by any of them. However, I do sell the watercolour paints by Roman Schmal, and I do have an affiliate link with Rosemary & Co, which is Roisin 2024. But I'd appreciate if you told them that I'm helping them out. Thanks very much. And I nearly forgot, the very good people at Detrimentus send me great big boxes of inks, for which I'm very grateful. Well, I thought you might like to know the type of food that you can get when you're over on an island in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. And I have to tell you, the food we had was so good. So on the ferry, on the way home, I figured I'd draw all the bits and pieces we had. Okay, so what did I use? I used my Sailor 55 degree Fude pen, my Roman Schmal watercolours, my Rosemary & Co R13 travel brush, and my white gel pen Jelly Roll by Sakura. We started off our special holiday in Clifton. Clifton is a little town just before you come to Cleggan, and it's lovely. I really recommend you try Clifton. It's very colourful and the food is great, and there's loads of places to eat. So we started off with lunch of mussels in coconut and lemongrass sauce, served with sourdough garlic bread, which was amazing. It was kind of like a ciabatta kind of a sourdough, and it was gorgeous. And the mussels in the coconut and lemongrass sauce were really delicious. Now, I'm going to be a bit critical too. They were a tiny bit on the salty side, but nonetheless they were absolutely gorgeous. I had seafood chowder, and the fish in the chowder was really fresh. It was great. Marcel shared his mussels with me, and the only criticism I have, which is not the fault of the restaurant in question at all, is that I hurt my lip a little bit on the rim of one of the mussels. So that's kind of more on the mussel shell than on the restaurant. It was great, and they were fat and orange and plump, which is just how I like my mussels. We also had a gorgeous flat white, and I don't know if that's a good indicator of how good a place is, but the service was excellent. It was prompt and so helpful and full of suggestions and all that kind of stuff. Then we got on the ferry and off we went to Inishbofin, and on the evening of our first day we had piri prawns and crab claws in garlic butter to start with, and they were just divine. The piri prawns are really hot and spicy, which we both love, and we were sharing both starters, and things got a little bit unseemly when we found ourselves counting how much the other had and how many crab claws the other had. So that'll tell you how good they were. Then for our main, we had hake in beer batter and chips with red cabbage slaw and tartar sauce. Now, I've got to tell you about the hake. It was the freshest I've ever had in all my life. And the batter, although it did say it was made with beer, I think that the flour used was gram flour, and I think they used turmeric as well, because it was bright yellow and it had little flecks of fresh green herbs in it. And I'm telling you, you could have eaten the batter all by itself, which I did, and it was delicious. And the taste of that fish will remain with me for a long time to come. Well, the next day was our anniversary, and even though we wanted to have something very special, there was a place down the road that did a lobster salad. The weather was just too horrible to sit outdoors. So we did go to the place in question, and we had lemon drizzle cake and orange cake, and they were both absolutely gorgeous. And so was the flat white again.
In the evening, we walked up the road. I think we had a dry period for about half an hour, and we walked through the wind and the blustery gales, me and my nice new dress bought specially for the occasion, and we stopped at the hotel up the road. We started with an open crab sandwich, which was a little on the disappointing side. The crab was fresh and lovely. However, there wasn't very much of it, and the butter on the bread wasn't real butter, it was spread, and I don't like spread. I don't eat spread. And it came with a nice salad, and it was all very lovely, but it was a bit disappointing. However, they more than made up for it with the scallops, with black pudding crumb and apple. I'm not sure how the apple was cooked, but it was kind of lightly cooked, and it was so good. It went so well with the fresh scallops, and there were a lot of scallops, and they were fresh and perfectly cooked, and the black pudding crumb was just right. So the taste combination was fantastic. And we finished off with a sticky toffee pudding with fresh cream, and that sticky toffee pudding was so good. It was so light, it would float out the window. I don't normally go for kind of heavy things like that, but this was to die for, and I would go back just for the sticky toffee pudding alone. Now, I will say that we had lots of IPA lager with cheese and onion tato crisps, and you know, you can't argue with a packet of cheese and onion tato crisps and a glass of IPA lager. Very, very nice. Now, the next day we would have gone home without having eaten lunch. However, as you know, the ferry was cancelled. The 1 o'clock sailing was cancelled. So off we went to another little pub, and we had sea trout with fettuccine and I think some kind of watercress. And the fettuccine was homemade. It was definitely homemade. It was so fresh, so perfectly cooked. And the sea trout was also perfectly cooked. I don't know whether it was fried or oven baked. I think it was oven baked, and it was delicious, crispy and fresh and perfectly cooked. So all in all, I'm going to tell you that the food in Inishbofin and indeed Clifton, the food was excellent for the whole 3 days of our stay. And I think we'd nearly go back just for the food alone.